Hello, I'm SallyJoMCooper, and this is Herb. This is a Conversations with Herb video. They're all about my dreams. Welcome to the edge of my mind. Let's jump off. There are dreams, and then there are dreams. There are dreams that are echoes of the daily, the mundane, the benign. There are dreams that are reworkings of things you've already seen, things that you already know. And then there are dreams bidden, dreams that you dream because you wish to dream a dream beyond. I've been afraid of these dreams. I've thought that's a very bad plan from time to time. And while I am awake, I do not limit myself with imaginings. I do not fear what the imagination might bring me when I am awake. But while I'm asleep, sometimes I think I've seen enough, so I haven't often sought to dream more. The idea of dreaming aware has always seemed like a bad plan, because often in a very bad dream, my out is to realize it's a dream and be done with it. Or maybe it's more like I don't think that I can conceive of the things that there could be to conceive as well as all of that unbidden things can. So it's been very rare that I've tried to dream of other places or other things or things beyond. But 2 times now, I've attempted this silly thing that someone on the internet called entering the fairy realm. And it's quite mad. And it was quite good. So let me tell you about them. My first dream about the fairy realm. I have to put it together for a second. So, I dreamed I was moving, and we arrived at this most beautiful city. And it was as high-tech as it could possibly be, and as merged with nature as it could possibly be. And it was very 2020. It was very, actually no, it was 2045. It was little machines and flying things and green spaces. Oh, glorious parks and green spaces and beauty, and it buzzed. Buzzed like a busy Asian city, but not too full. Full like parts of Denver, not full like Korea, but high tech like Japan. And we got to this city and we had a vehicle loaded down with things and we were moving there. And we unpacked into an apartment. And even though the city was quite lush and plush, this apartment was not. It was a cheap apartment. And in the dream, I was sleeping and I woke up and I saw a room that had been painted. And I suddenly looked over to my husband, who was there, and I said, "Have I painted a rental?" And he said, No, we're not. You didn't paint it." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I got up and I went into the kitchen. And even though I didn't remember him from the beginning of the dream, my dishes had been washed and there was no dishwasher. And they were stacked in such a way that I knew my dad had washed my dishes. And I was thankful for that and kind of amused. And I was sitting by the sink looking out at the city, and I was looking over other buildings like you do in a city in the lights, so you can see things and you can't see other things because there's lit areas and unlit areas. And one of the unlit areas was the area directly by my window. And I began to hear a noise out in that portion, where I knew I couldn't see, and it was a baby. It was a very little baby, and it scared me. And I thought, there can't be a baby out on the awning. And then suddenly a little hand comes up and touches my screen and presses in on my screen, and I know it's a baby. And so I scooped her up off of the awning, and it was a little Hispanic baby. And I held her, and I was worried about her, and as I had popped off the screen and scooped up this baby, I noticed a man down in the alley, and he saw me pick up the baby, and he looked at me and he waved like this, like very summoning, very much I know what to do. And so I carried the baby, and I went down around out through the apartment to where I could find this man, and this man says, "We have to take her to the king." And I said, "Okay." And so we went through the very tall city, and then we got to a lusher city, a more suburban city, and there were no more streets. It went from beautiful lawn to beautiful lawn, very upper middle class. Like, it was obvious people really lived in these houses, and there were sheds for lawnmowers and picnic tables with cups left out on them. So it was upscale but not so classy. And then we continued through these different lawns, and it kept getting wealthier and wealthier, and at last we come to a lavish ranch style house, and I realize this isn't a king, this is a kingpin, this is a drug lord. And we go into the drug lord's house, and it had a very strange aesthetic. Its aesthetic was like, it was like Asian, but then it was also like Mario. And like, one of the servers was wearing a traditional like Asian looking butler outfit, and it had a Mario shell that was digitized as a square back thing, kind of like the ladies' kimonos with the very large bows, but it was a Mario shell. And I look around, and up on a pedestal is this artist who works in plastic, and I've seen his pieces before, and I know they're very expensive, but most of his pieces are about a foot tall, and this piece was larger than life size. It was heroic scale, and it was 3 solid black sculptures, and they were 3 soldiers in black chairs, and one was passed out to drinking, and one was slouched over, and one was afflicted in another way. I don't quite remember, but it seemed to be drugs and alcoholism and maybe gaming. They were all afflicted soldiers, like defeated by circumstance and their own action soldiers. And it really bothered me because how you present in uniform is very important, and they were in uniform, and it was quite disturbing. But also very opulently expensive if you know this artist, like, and that was up on a pedestal in behind, more or less a throne. And I walked forward with the old man, and I suddenly realized that they would want to kill the child. And we went forward to the king, and he said, "You'll have to give her up." And I thought that I did. And he took out, or no, I think he had one of his people take out a sword and chopped her in half. But I had replaced the child with a ham. And I don't quite know how I do that, I don't remember. But I had replaced the child with a ham. So the king thought he had killed the child. I thought so. But actually, I had replaced her with a ham. And the king said, "You have fooled me." And I said, well, I knew you needed the symbol. And then the king laughed and he said, indeed, I needed the symbol. And I was able to leave with the old man and the child. And the old man said he could return the child now that the king was satisfied. And so I gave the king the child. And on the way out, after the old man had left with the child, I saw one of the guards. And I saw that they were antsy. And I said to him, do you need to toke? Because I know that's slang for smoking weed sometimes. And he was like, And I was like, come on. And we went back away from the fancy mansion and we went to more regular people's houses and we slipped behind a Murphy shed and there was a little table there and we sat there for a moment and I started asking him questions about the king. And then I had asked him how people were there and how the king was and if it was well to live under his rule. And he said mostly he didn't bother other people and he just sold his drugs and just made his money and people were happy. And I said, well, that's good. And he said, why did you ask me these things? And I said to him, I needed to know if I would kill him or there would be war. And I don't know why I said that because I don't really know if that was my plan. That's what I said in the dream. And then I left. I left that area and I started walking through the city and I walked by this most wonderful toy shop. It was it was just all of the most marvelous toys. And I mean, many of them were made of wood, but they were still high tech, like beautiful toys. And I walked through more of this beautiful city and I got to higher and higher tech portions of the city. And then try to understand it correctly. There was a robotic panther that was giant. It was the size of like a transformer, like the big transformer robots, but it was a panther. It was a robot panther. And it started coming after me. And then suddenly I had a suit too. And I was running in this giant robot Power Ranger suit, and we were fighting this panther, and we were climbing higher up the buildings, and we were fighting this panther. And then it became absolutely apparent that there was no way that I could defeat it and live, and my suit knew it too. And my suit ejected me and said, run, and continued to fight this panther. And I ran and I woke up because it was very frightening. And that was my first dream. That was what I consider a fairy realm dream. And then I don't know how many days later, a few days or a week, I thought that was a more interesting than usual dream. Perhaps I'll try it again. And so, before I went to bed, I said I would like to walk in the fairy realm. And so, I had another dream. And in that dream, it started, I was at the ranch house, which is just a single wide trailer, by the way, in South Dakota. And out on the south side, there were suddenly these large stone faces in the sandstone, kind of like Aztec or Mayan, but not quite that shape. And they were huge. And I thought, it's so funny, I've never found these before because they were in plain sight. And then once I got on them and looked around them, I saw another building. And it was a great square stone building. And it was the kind of way it is sometimes in dreams where the landscape changes. So the landscape wasn't the way it was in real life. It was different. It had this large square stone building, like 3 or 4 story high. No, maybe, no, 3 or 4 story high. It was almost cube shaped. But well, at the same time it was cube shaped, it wasn't like modern. It was more like ancient temple cube shaped. And the stairs were these great temple stairs. And the inside was like being inside of like Parliament or Cambridge universities. They were beautiful, long, twisting stairwells and hallways, and even the side rooms were beautiful, and there were people learning to play violin and people learning to play cellos, and none of the people acknowledged me or looked at me or talked to me. And there was a store that sold toys in this great building. And I don't remember more than that because I think I was woke up early. But it was kind of the same, where it was perfectly part of nature, but very high tech, very modern. And I haven't tried it again because a lot's been going on, and I think about being in a very good state of mind before you try excessive meditation or active dreaming like that. But I've never seen a great stone building that's square, and I've certainly not dwelt on electronic panthers. But those are the dreams that I've had when I said I would like to see the fairy realm.